There's one thing missing from most digital transformation projects today, and it's probably not what you think. I'm going to talk about what that is here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients through their digital transformation journeys. And when companies think about the things that are missing or the best practices that they need for their digital transformation journeys, oftentimes we think about things like project management or picking the right technology or having the right program manager, whatever the case may be. But one of the most overlooked aspects of a solid digital transformation is having independence on your project. And I want to talk about what I mean by that here today. Now, although Third Stage has clients throughout the world and we have offices throughout the world, we're based in the United States, and that's a country, as you may know, that values independence, and we celebrate our independence. And independence is something that becomes very valuable during digital transformations as well, regardless of what part of the world you might be in. So what I want to talk about today is what is independence and how can we identify the ways that we can best leverage that independence for our successful digital transformation. So the first and probably the most obvious aspect of independence that becomes valuable during digital transformation is help selecting the right technology, the right software, whatever the application or applications might be that might help automate your business. Now, this is probably the most obvious one, like I said, because people tend to see the value of having someone that's completely independent, helping them select the right software for their organization. Now, not only do you want someone that's independent, that has no affiliation with the software vendors, but you also want to make sure that you have a team or an outside consultant that knows the ERP vendors, the strengths and weaknesses, and has actual hands-on implementation experience. All of that is important to ensure that you have the right independence and the right view of what technology might work the best for your organization based on your business requirements. Now, another important component of the software evaluation or selection process is negotiation. Another reason you want someone that's independent is because you don't want to hire someone that's going to be negotiating against themselves. You want someone that represents you, the client, and that can represent you, the client, when negotiating against the software vendors, and ultimately defining something that is a win-win for both you as an organization and also for the vendor for winning your business as well. But those are just some of the ways that independence becomes so important during the software evaluation and selection process. So while it may be obvious how independence can support and benefit a software selection process, it's not quite as obvious to all on how that independence can also help in implementation. And the reason independence is important during implementation of the technology is because when you look at it from a software vendor's perspective or a system integrator's perspective, their goal is to get you to buy as much software as possible and to go live on that software as quickly as possible so that they can start billing the recurring revenue that comes from that software being used. So there's an economic incentive to push the project along faster than you may be comfortable with, and it's not necessarily aligned with your best interest. So you always need someone during the implementation that can act as an extension of your project management team, represent you during the implementation, and help make smart business decisions that don't necessarily overcommit to technology, don't necessarily rush in implementation, and don't necessarily get into situations where technology shouldn't be being used at all. So those are the types of decisions that can be very valuable, and you need that objective, rational outside view of what that implementation might look like, what the best approach is for your business, and someone that can think of it from a big picture perspective and look at it more strategically and help manage and execute accordingly. Now, just as you need someone that's independent to help you with the implementation of technology, there's also all the non-technical stuff that's very important to address, and most software vendors and system integrators don't address those critical success factors. So for example, organizational change management. That's something that's a critical success factor for every digital transformation I've ever been involved with in my career. And so we want to make sure that we have someone on our team that can look beyond the technology itself and look at organizational change and how to ensure user adoption and employee engagement, ensure that we've identified roles and responsibilities, we have the right organizational design, a solid change strategy and plan in place that meets our needs. Those sorts of activities are very important during an implementation, yet most software vendors and system integrators don't do that work, or at least they don't do it well. So looking beyond the technology in things like organizational change management, Or another example would be master data management. That's another example of an area that software vendors and system integrators typically assume that you're going to handle as the organization that's implementing. So having someone that can help you fill in some of those gaps and address those non-technology or non-software specific areas of your transformation are very important, and that's something that an independent third party can provide to you. Now, so far I've focused on how independence can help with a technology or software implementation or transformation. There's going to be times where you want to say no to technology too. It may be that you're implementing a core ERP system, but you need help defining where that software should or shouldn't be used within your organization. Just because a software vendor says they have the capability or they have a module to address a certain function within your business doesn't necessarily mean that you should go implement that technology. You want to first make sure that you've identified the gaps between what the software can do and what your internal needs and capabilities are. And you need to do that independently and objectively by someone who's not there to try to sell you software. So looking at the opportunities to say no to software is arguably just as important as where you're saying yes to software and where you know you're going to be implementing new technology within the organization. It's just as important to narrow the focus and exclude those areas that you know you don't want to be implementing technology, and that's an area where an independent third party like Third Stage can help. One of the biggest challenges with implementations and one of the biggest risks is having a system integrator that is managing their own work and overseeing their own work. So in other words, the fox is guarding the hen house. And what I mean by that is a lot of times system integrators are incentivized by self-interest to not expose risks of the project or not to expose deficiencies or shortcomings of their projects. And a lot of the expert witness work that we've been involved with as a team across the world with a lot of these different ERP failures throughout the last decade or so have involved system integrators that were checking the quality of their own work, and they were giving glowing reviews of their own work up until those reviews weren't so glowing and until there was a failure on their hands. So it's really important to recognize that there's a political dynamic at play when you have a system integrator or a vendor to where when they're judging or grading their own work, they're generally going to overstate the benefit and the value that they're bringing. So having that independent third party to help identify risks and be the candid, again, the client-facing and the client advocate type of role, all of that's going to be very important during your implementation to ensure you've identified those risks. And most importantly, that you've identified a solid plan to mitigate those risks to ensure that they don't become problems later on. Now, the final point I'll make here is to watch out for fake independence. Most of the ERP consulting space is somehow aligned with a software vendor or software vendors. Whether or not they admit that to you is a different story. Whether or not they have creative ways of hiding the fact that they're not independent is another story. But some of the things you'll want to watch out for are things like companies that say that because they implement multiple solutions or they are a system integrator for multiple solutions, they can in fact be an independent advisor to your project. That's simply false, it's not true, and it's not something that's in your best interest typically, because the minute you hire a system integrator or a big consulting firm that is a system integrator partner for multiple vendors, you're at the mercy of their internal politics, of their internal commission structures and pay structures. I know when I was at one of the big consulting firms back early in my career, we were aligned with the SAP practice in our division. There were other people that did what I did that were aligned with our Oracle practice or with the Microsoft practice. And in each case, we're biased to influence the client to what we want them to do technology-wise. So you have to watch for that independence or that perceived independence that some will tout. The other thing to watch out for is a bias in terms of lack of knowledge. A lot of times consulting firms or individual consultants only know one or two or three different systems out there, so they're inherently going to focus on what they know and not necessarily going to open their eyes to things they don't know. So having a team with a broad breadth of experience that has worked with a lot of different ERP systems, not just in helping evaluate the systems, but helping implement, is also critical. So when you're planning your digital transformation, whether you're in the selection phase, whether you're about to start an implementation, whether you're in the middle of an implementation and starting to run into some challenges, it's important to think about how can we leverage outside independence in unbiased ways that can help us make the right decisions, help us execute better, help us identify risk better, and hopefully this video has provided some of that guidance here today. I encourage you to check out some of the links below. I've included a number of resources that will help you in your journey on your digital transformation. I also encourage you to provide any comments you have below, and hope you found this information useful and look forward to chatting with you soon. Take care.